Greetings, grade 4s. Welcome to this Worksheet Cloud grade 4 maths lesson, which is all about rounding off. I have fun doing maths, but I know not everyone does. And at Worksheet Cloud, we're all about you having fun, which is why we've added the new feature, this great new feature called the Rewards Hub, where you can earn rewards while you're learning. So that's things like Nomi Hot Chocolate or even a PlayStation 5. But more about that later on. Let's get on to today's maths lesson. Okay, so it's all about rounding. I'm going to have a look at today's lesson goals. I'm just going to jump back to my recording thing just to make sure it's recording correctly. It is. Good stuff. Okay, our goals today. Understand why we might use rounding off. I think it's really important to know why you learn things, not just learn them because your teacher tells you to. Understand the mechanism of rounding off and how you can apply it to any number, and also the idea of compensating as it pertains to rounding. That'll make more sense when we get to that slide. Things that will help you today is an understanding of place value. If you know place value, once we've got on the mechanism, today you'll be able to round off any number, including decimals, although those don't form part of your syllabus in grade 4, I don't think, or at least rounding them off doesn't. Okay, let's quickly glance at that prior knowledge and why it's important. So that number over there is 89,631. This digit is a 3, but it doesn't mean 3 in this place because it's in the tens place, so that means that it represents 30. This digit is a 6, but because it's in the hundreds place, it represents 600. Thousands place, 10,000s place. So the more places you understand, we've got units, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, then 100,000s, then millions, then 10 millions, then 100 millions, and so on and so forth, to numbers you probably haven't even heard of before. But the more places place values you understand, the easier it'll be. Once you've got the mechanism, understand it, you'll be able to apply it to anything. Okay, why do we round off? What's the point? I've thought of a few. I racked my brains to think of some of the reasons why we round off. I'm sure there are others. These were the ones that popped into my head quickly. So it's easier for getting a rough total. So let's say, for example, I was going to a sweet shop and I had 50 Rand and I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to arrive at the till and not have enough money. I'd keep a running tally of how much I was going as I bought or as I picked up various items in the store. So perhaps the first one was 9 Rand. I'm like close to 10. I'll keep 10 in my head. And the next one was 13 Rand. I'm like also pretty close to 10. I'll keep 20 in my head, the 2 10s for one for each of those things. Then the next one is like 11. I'll keep 10 in my head, so I'm on around about 30, I know. And then maybe another one for 8 Rand. I'm going also close to 10, so I'm around about 40. And now I need to be careful what it is I buy, otherwise I'm not going to have enough. So that's what I mean by keeping a rough total in your head or getting a rough idea of what your answer is going to be, which is similar to grade for estimating. So let's say I was looking to multiply 11 and 50, and I wanted to get a rough idea, an estimate of what my answer is going to be. Well, if I say 11 is close to 10, then I could rather say 10 times 50. So I know then my answer is going to be roughly 500. So it's a good way of estimating. So round off so that you can estimate things. When details are not important, perhaps I'm at work and having a discussion with a colleague about how sad it is how much petrol costs, and I want to tell them how much it cost me to fill up my tank. The conversation is about how expensive it is, not the exact details. So I'm not going to go there and say, when I filled up my tank the other day, it was 1,393 Rand and 25 cents, because that's not the important part. The detail is not important. I'd rather say I went to the petrol station. It cost me 1,400 to fill up. It's very close to what the number was, but it's a rough idea because the detail is not important in a situation like that. Maybe I want to do it to sound more impressive. perhaps I won the lotto, won some money in the lotto, not won the lotto. It's very unlikely. In fact, no, it's impossible because I never enter the lotto. But I don't enter the lotto because I know how small the chance is that you'll win, because I worked it out. In case you don't know, the chance of getting all 6 numbers is almost 1 in 14 million, which is a very small chance. Anyway, let's pretend that my dog is very excited about me whispering. He thought I was calling him over for a pat. Come, Bean, you can have a pat. Come. Good boy. Oh, and you, Pickle. Good boy. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, so let's say I got some money in the lotto and it was about 930 Rand. I might then, if I was trying to sound a bit more impressive, tell my friends I won almost 1,000 Rand, because 1,000 sounds better than 930. Okay, and finally, for like something really practical, we actually don't have those coins anymore. So you might notice that in a supermarket, you'll find that something is like 10 Rand 99 and another thing is 11 Rand, or no, 13 Rand 99, and another thing's 25 Rand 99. And all those 99s come up to, when you go to the till, and perhaps your final amount you have to pay is 325 Rand and let's say 97 cents. But we don't have 1 cent coins and 2 cent coins anymore. In fact, they don't even make 5 cent coins anymore, although we do still have them around. The smallest one we have is 10. So when you're paying cash, they will round it down to the nearest 10. So they would never want to cheat you. They won't round it up, which we're just going to round to the nearest. That's how we learn it in school. But when you get to the checkout and you pay, they will only charge you 90 cents, not 97 cents. So they'll round that 7 cents off because we no longer have the coins to do it. I'm not going to tell you a story about when I was young, because I always said I wasn't going to say that, but these days I do. Okay, so the number system we use, which is the Arabic number system, bet most of you didn't know that, works with groups of 10. So what I mean by that is, if you think of when you're counting, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then when you get to the next one, you actually go back to naught with 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and you put another one into the tens column. So after, so that's what I mean by groups of 10. So it's a decimal system is what we're using. It's groups of 10. So when we're rounding off, what we're doing is trying to find the closest group of 10. So when we're rounding to the nearest 10, we are looking to see which 10 grouping we're closest to. So let's, for example, think of the number 17. The 10 that comes before that is 10, and the 10 that comes after 17 is 20. And we're asking ourselves, are we closer to 10 or are we closer to 20? And I hope you'll realize that we're closer to 20 when we're on 17. Rounding to the nearest 100, what we're doing is we're looking to see which 100 grouping we're closest to. So let's imagine we have the number 412. The 100 that comes before 412 is 400. The 100 that comes after is 500. And we're asking ourselves, is 412 closer to 400 or closer to 500? And finally, if we're rounding to the nearest 1,000, we're doing exactly the same, but looking at the nearest 1,000 grouping. So maybe we've got 2,845, and we want to know if it's closer to 2,000 or closer to 3,000. All right. So when we're looking at rounding off, we want to know which way we're going to go. Are we closer to the one before or closer to the one after? So if we were looking at tens and our number ended in 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that's quite obviously closer to the group before, because that's less than half. And if our number that we're looking at is a 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, it's going to round forward to the next 10, because that's quite obviously closer to the next 10. But what happens when it's in the middle? Okay, so let's quickly, just before we get to the middle, when we're rounding, we're looking to see if it's shorter to get to the group that comes before or the group after, like, for example, 78. So I'm looking at that 8 and I'm going, well, 8 is definitely closer to the next 10, so that's going to round off to 80. So if you're looking at those digits, 0 to it's actually a 0 again because there's a 0 on the end. We're only looking at the last digit. All right, so 0 to 9. 0 to 4 obviously closer, and we round down. We go to the one before. And 6 to 9 are definitely in the second half, and we round up. But what happens if it's in the middle? It's time for a joke. It's not really funny. It's more of a story. I'm going to use my middle name because I don't want to offend anyone. If your middle name is also James or your first name is James, then I apologize. This joke is not about you because the person in my story is not too bright. Okay, so let's say James is doing the Robben Island swim. Now that is a very big swim. You feel pretty cool if you can manage to finish that one. It's swimming from Robben Island all the way to the coast. It's a good few kilometers of swimming in the cold ocean. And it's all about seeing whether you can make it. So in my story, James sets out from Robben Island, swimming towards the coast. And he's swimming and he's swimming and he's getting fairly tired. And he's exactly halfway to the coast. Same distance to go all the way to the coast or to go back to Robben Island, and he's feeling tired. And so he turns around and swims back to Robben Island. And I hope some of you are going, why would he do that? Because it would be the same amount of effort to keep going to the coast. And then he could say, yay, I did it. I've done the Robben Island swim. And that story is a silly story I use to illustrate what happens when we have a 5, when we're exactly in the middle. So I hope like you, like James, you want to, not like James, you want to carry on and get to the next one. And so what we do is whenever we end on a 5 in exactly the middle, we be optimistic and we round forward to the next group. So I hope whenever you end up with something ending in a 5, you remember the story. You groan and think of the stupidness of Mr. Travis's stories, but you remember what to do. Okay. Compensating. I think actually let's come back to compensating. And for now, let's jump across to learning the mechanism on the whiteboard. So I need to go back to here and jump to the whiteboard, which is not showing. Why is that not showing? Okay, give me a moment. I think I just need to refresh it on here. Should come up now. Not that. There we go. Oh, good. Right, so we're onto the whiteboard and we're looking at rounding off. So I've drawn my number line just to help us in case we need to refer to it. So in fact, what I've got down here, nope, that's not what I want to do. What I've got down here is I've written down the same number a few times, and we're going to round the same number off to different places in order to understand how the rounding mechanism works. Okay, so I think let's start with let's start with rounding to the nearest 10. Nearest 10. All right, so when we're rounding to the nearest 10, there's a few things we need to remember. First off, we need to know where the tens place is. So I'm going to underline that. The 3 is in the tens place. Now, we don't actually do anything with that yet. What we do is we look to the digit on the right-hand side of that. In this case, I'm looking at the 1. Right. Oh, maybe before I do that, I should just mention, what we're checking here is whether this number, 89,631, will round off to 89,630 or 89,640. So will it go to the 10 that's before or the 10 that's after? The rest of the numbers in front are not too important for now. Okay, so we are having a look at the 1, which is over here. And we're asking ourselves, is that 1 closer to 0 or closer to 10? And I hope that you can see that the 1 is definitely closer to 0. So that means we're going to round down. We're going to have a 0 on the end. And then we're going to have the 3 stays the same. 6, 9, and 8, all the same. Okay, so what we're seeing then is that when we round to the nearest 10, we end with a 0 on the end. There's at least one 0 on the end. So everything after the place we're rounding to becomes a 0. Okay, also I wanted to say, please don't do that. because they are not equal to each other. That is a mathematical lie. What we're going to use is this wavy equal sign, which means roughly equal to. So that's what we use when we're rounding off. Some people use that as well. Perhaps your teacher does, but the best way to do it is the wavy equal sign, just to show that it's roughly equal to. Okay, we're having a look at the second one now, and this time we're going to round off to the nearest 100. Okay, so step one, let's have a look to see where our hundreds place is. So that's my hundreds place. I'm going to look to the digit on the right of that, my 3. I'm going to have a look back at my number line over here. Is 3 closer to rounding down or closer to rounding up? And I hope that you can all see that the jump to the left is shorter than the jump to the right, so we're going to round down. So that means our number is going to, well, because we're rounding to the nearest 100, which has 2 zeros, our number is definitely going to end with 2 zeros. The 6 stays the same, 9 stays the same, and 8 stays the same. And so our answer is roughly 89,600. That's rounded off to the nearest 100. If we look at the, there we go. Sorry, I wasn't showing you that. So let me actually do that part again. What I said was, when we round off to the nearest 100, we have 2 zeros on the end because we're ending with 100. 6 stays the same, 9 stays the same, and 8 stays the same. Okay, looking at our following number, and this time we are rounding off to the nearest 1,000. So already, actually, if you're starting to notice the pattern, because we end with 3 zeros, I know my answer is going to have 3 zeros on the end. But I'll come back to that later. So let's look at our thousands place. There's our thousands place. So we look to the digit on the right of that, which is the 6. So let's have a look back at our number line, I think probably for the last time. We are going to have a look and see. Let's change color. All right, so we're looking at 6. And we want to know if it's closer to going forward or closer to going back. And I hope you can see that the jump forward is going to be easier than the jump back. All right, so going back down to over here where we're having a look. Allow me to quickly cheat. No, actually, it's fine. It's fine. I've fixed it already. I had a different number there. You'll notice that, in fact, I had a 9 over here, but I made it a 7 over there, and there is a reason. We'll come to what happens if it was a 9 later on. Okay, but back to over here, we said 6 rounds up, and so this time, instead of leaving the 7 alone, we're going to add 1 to it. All right, so our answer is now going to become, there's my 3 zeros, 4, 0, 0, and 0, and my 7 and 1 is 8, and the 8 in the front stays the same, and so my answer then in the nearest 1,000 is 88,000, and that's my answer. For the last one, now I don't believe that most of your teachers will make you round off to the nearest 10,000, but we may as well do it because it's the same thing, and as long as you know the place value, you're going to be fine. So my 10,000s place is over there. I look to the digit on the right-hand side of that, which is my 7. I'll ask myself, does the 7 go up or down? Well, 7 is definitely close to the next one, so I'm going to add 1 to the 8. So that will become a 9. I have 4 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's my answer. Okay, let's practice a little bit now. So I've got the same 5 numbers here and a little over to the right. What I'd like us to do is to practice going through each of these, first to the nearest 10 and then to the nearest 100. If you are feeling comfortable with it, then you should pause the video to do it. But just before we get started, I think now is a great time for a Nomu hot chocolate break. Let's be honest, studying sucks. But here at Worksheet Cloud, we make it suck way less. In Worksheet Cloud, you can earn avatars, sidekicks, collectible coins, and then level up all while studying. Plus, we've just added our most exciting feature to date, the brand new Worksheet Cloud Rewards Hub. With Worksheet Cloud Rewards Hub, you can earn epic rewards and unlock entry tickets to win real giveaway prizes, including a Sony PlayStation 5, some yummy Nomu hot chocolate, and some fresh Worksheet Cloud merch. The more questions you answer, the more points you earn, and the more rewards you unlock. Worksheet Cloud makes your studying easier with video lessons, practice exams, practice questions, and study notes. In other words, we're your go-to place for all your studying. Ask your parents to sign you up at worksheetcloud.com today. Now back to the maths. Okay, so I'm going to ignore these ones for now, and I'm just going to focus on the tens first. Like I said, if you're comfortable with this, why don't you try and do it without me first, and then you can turn on if you get stuck, or turn on to check if your answers are right. Okay, rounding to the nearest 10 means I need to identify the tens in each of my numbers here. All right, I'm in fact just going to go through and underline them all right to start before I even begin. And let me put in my roughly equals. Okay, we'll start with the number 1. Makes sense. I don't know why I even say that. Okay, we look at 6. Because it's to the right of the tens digit, 6 is going to go up. It's closer to the next 10. So I'm going to add 1 over there. And my answer is going to become 350. Noticing, when we're rounding to the 10, we definitely have a 0 on the end. All right, 1 0 and 1 0. It's not always going to be 1, but we'll come to that a little bit later in the lesson. Looking at the next one, number 2, I look at the number to the right of where we're rounding. 7 is going to round up, so I'm going to add 1 to the next column. I'm left with 190. 1 0 1 0. 2 is closer to going down, so I'm not going to add anything to the 1 in front of it, and I'm left with 210. 6 is closer to the next 10, so I'm going to add a 1 to it. 1060. Noticing the 0 on the end. Last one, 5. I hope you're remembering the story of James. He's in the middle. All right, so when it's in the middle, we round up. It's going to become 90, and that's our answer. Okay, if you were comfortable with that, then why don't you try the nearest 100 with the same numbers? Okay, so we're rounding to the nearest 100, so I'm going to go ahead and underline the hundreds place in each of them. When I look at the last of my questions, number 5, my 100, I don't have any hundreds in this number. I have 0 hundreds. Now, we don't ever write that because it's really just wasting time and space and ink and all of those sorts of things, or pencil if you use pencil. I mean, I think some of you in grade 4 will be 9. You could say that you are 9 years old, meaning that you have 0 tens in your age. If you're 10, you could say that you're 10 because you have 0 hundreds in your age, and then you've got a 10 in your age. But it doesn't really make sense to waste that time or that space. So although we haven't got anything in the hundreds place, there's an invisible 0 if you like. So that's still where we're rounding it off to. Okay, looking at the top one, we're looking at the 4 over here. 4 is going to round down because it's closer to the 0 side. So we are now looking at having 2 zeros on the end. And the number in front of that is 3 because we didn't add anything to it. Looking at the 8 is going to go up. So we're going to add a 1 to the next column. 200. 2 zeros, 2 zeros. The next one, I have a look over here. 1 is going to go down, so we're going to be left with an unchanged 2, and 2 zeros. You'll notice that these two answers are the same, even though we started with different numbers, and that's because this is close to 200 but just a little bit less, and this is close to 200 but just a little bit more. Okay, having a look at the fourth one in the middle, so we're going to add 1 to the next column. Final answer 1,100, 2 zeros and 2 zeros. Lastly, we look at our tens column, we see it's going to go up, so we're going to add 1 to the hundreds column, and we're left with an answer of 100, 2 zeros, 2 zeros. I hope this is starting to look familiar. You can start to see how it doesn't matter what you're asked to round off to. If you know the place, you'll be able to round that off. Okay, I've got some special cases just to look at. I mention these because they do come up. Maths teachers often like to check if their children understand these things, and they throw these ones in, sometimes in a test, which is a bit mean. But hopefully you'll see these before you get to a test. Okay, well, you definitely will because you're seeing them with me now. What if we've got this? I want to round off 3 to my nearest 10. Well, first of all, that's my tens place. I have 0 tens. I'm going to look to the digit on the right. 3 is going to round down, so I don't add anything there at all, which means that I've got 0 tens and 0 units. This 0 being when we round it off to the nearest 10. Now, 0 tens and 0 units is actually just 0. And that's what I wanted to say. It's absolutely all right to round off and get an answer of 0. If I look at what's in my bank account and I round it off to the nearest million, it's 0 because I'm a lot closer to 0 than I am to a million. All right, let's have a look at the next one. We are rounding this one to the nearest 100. Again, we have no hundreds here, so there's 0 hundreds. I look to the digit on the right of that. 4 is going to go down. I'm not going to add anything at the front, which means I'm ending up with 0 hundreds and then the 2 zeros from there afterwards, which is just the same as saying I have 0, because the nearest 100 to 49 is 0. Okay, I've got a few here to look at where things get a little bit harder, but it follows very much a similar pattern to what it is that we've been doing so far. So I've just got 3. I'm rounding off the first one to the nearest 10, which means I'm looking at my tens column. I'm going to have to look at the number to the right of that to see if we go up or down. 7 is going to round up. I'm going to put that there, which means I've got 10. But I only have space for a single digit down here. So I'm going to leave the 0 there, and just like with adding, I'm going to carry the 1 to the next slot, which means that my roughly equals 2 answer is 900. So I was quite careful earlier on to not say that because we have 1 0 on 10, we're going to have 1 0 on there, because it's possible to have more. The way I said it was, when you have a 0, when you're rounding to the nearest 10, the last digit will be 0. When you're rounding to the nearest 100, the last 2 digits will be 0. So that is always true, but it is possible to have a 0 in one of the other spaces as well. Okay, let's look at the next one, rounding to the nearest 100. There's my hundreds. I have a look on this side. 9's going to round up. And I'm going to get, oh, why did I even do this one? This is just like before. Oh, well, we're busy with it now anyway. Roughly equals to 900. Oh, I know why I did this. I wanted to show you that we can have two numbers that, or a number that if we round it to 10 and 100, it ends up being the same answer, 900 or 900, even though we are rounding to the nearest 10 and nearest 100. Okay, we also have ones like this. I'm going to round this to the nearest 10, which means I'm looking at the 9, 9 means I must go up. I'm going to add that, but I've only got space for one here, so I'm going to push another one up. I also only have a space here, but I get 10, so I'm going to push another one up. So in fact, my answer for this one is 10,000. So even though I'm rounding off to the nearest 10, because I've carried in each of those other ones, sorry, 1,000, not 10,000, I've ended up with 0. Oh, I'm just off the screen there. Okay, so that is what it means. Well, that's how we round. And the only thing now standing between you and having a very firm grasp of rounding off is to practice. If you understand the mechanism and you practice it, it's going to stick in your head and you'll be able to do it, whether you're doing it with tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, 10 millions, 100 millions, billions, and so on. Or even if you're doing it with decimals, as long as you understand what tenths, hundredths, thousandths are, which you might not do just yet. Okay, switching back to our slideshow quickly, I just wanted to talk about the compensating. All right, so to be more accurate with our guesses or our estimates, we should keep in mind, so the easiest way for me to explain this is to use my sweet shop example again. So I've got into my sweet shop. I wish I had owned a sweet shop. I've gone into the sweet shop and I got the first item and it was 12 Rand. So I'm keeping in my mind the close, it's like about 10 Rand. And I get to the next one and it's 13 Rand. I'm going, oh, it's about 20 Rand. And the next one's 12 Rand again. I'm going, it's about 30 Rand. And the next one's 14 Rand. I'm going, yeah, it's about 40 Rand. Now you will have noticed that each one of those was a little bit more. So in each time I was rounding it down. And what that means is I actually am probably quite a lot more over. So if I was wanting to know or wanting to keep track, then in my mind I should be keeping it that it's I'm a bit over 40, so I should be very careful about what else I buy. In fact, I won't be able to buy anything more than I think a Rand was all I'd have left, even though I'd rounded it off to 40. So when we are guessing, when we're estimating, we should keep that in mind. Another example of that would be if we are, say, working out what is 11 times 50. I think I used that example earlier. And we say, oh, well, 11's close to 10. So 10 times 50 is 500. We just need to bear in mind that because we rounded the first one down, our actual answer is going to be more than what our estimate was. So that's what I mean about bearing in mind compensating and how it relates to rounding off. Okay, so just a reminder, just to remember, the answer to a rounding question will always only have zeros after the rounded place. So if we're rounding to the nearest 10, it's going to have one zero on the end. If we're rounding to 100, it's going to definitely end with 2 zeros. 1,000 definitely end with 3 zeros, and so on. When we're rounding results in the rounded place, reaching 10, we carry as we do in standard adding. That's just what I'm saying is like in these examples. Let me just quickly go back to showing you the whiteboard. In these examples, when we got to the next level and we carried the 1, that's what I'm talking about over there. Okay, also remember that sometimes a number can already be in its rounded form. I didn't do any examples like this, but if your teacher gives you 90 and says round it off to the nearest 10, 90 is actually the answer already. So watch out for tricky teachers who might throw those in to check if you understand. And finally, rounding off can give you an answer of 0. That's also quite all right. So bear that in mind. As I've mentioned before, you don't learn by watching maths or watching someone else do maths. You learn by practicing it. So click on the link in the video description to download the worksheet so that you can practice what it is that we've been going over this lesson. And finally, don't forget to get your parents to sign you up to Worksheet Cloud so you have access to all of their worksheets and you can practice and become good at maths and the other subjects as well. Just my interest is in the maths side of things. Also, so that you have access to their rewards hub, where you can win cool prizes like some of their merchandise, some hot chocolate for your study breaks. It really does help. And possibly even the PlayStation 5. I wish I was eligible for that, but sadly no. Grade 4s, have a great afternoon. I will see you soon for another episode. Goodbye.